AITA for confronting my sister over her parenting choices, even though it might have cost our relationship. I've always considered myself pretty close with my family, but over the past couple of years, things have gotten complicated. I'm 32, married, and have two kids, ages 5 and 3. My younger sister, Emily, is 28 and has a 4-year-old daughter, Sophie. Emily and I have been close since childhood, but we've always had different approaches to life, and lately, those differences have started to feel unbridgeable. The main issue started when Sophie was born. Emily decided very early on that she wanted to parent in a way that could only be described as laissez-faire extreme. She doesn't believe in schedules, bedtimes, or any sort of consistent rules. Sophie eats when she wants, goes to bed when she wants, and is basically allowed to do anything she likes at any time. At first, I try not to judge because I know parenting is personal, but I started noticing some concerning patterns. Sophie frequently throws tantrums in public, often because she isn't allowed to feel frustrated in normal ways, and she has trouble listening to her teachers and peers. Emily sees none of this as a problem. She's convinced that children are naturally disciplined and that any attempt to guide them is oppressive. A few months ago, Sophie came over to our house for a playdate. My kids were playing with her, and I noticed that she grabbed toys from them, pushed them when she got frustrated, and threw a fit when she didn't get her way. I tried to redirect her gently and suggested that maybe she could ask nicely or take turns. Emily, who was in the next room on a video call with a friend, yelled across the house that I was ruining Sophie's personality by teaching her she can't have what she wants immediately. I was shocked. I didn't respond at that moment because I didn't want to escalate, but later, I told my husband that I was seriously concerned about Emily's approach. Since then, I've tried to talk to Emily multiple times about Sophie's behavior. I brought up incidents at preschool, her tantrums at family events, and even moments where she seems unsafe because she refuses to listen to basic rules. Each time, Emily gets defensive. She accuses me of trying to control her child, or of being judgmental. She insists that Sophie is a happy, creative, free-spirited child, and that anyone who criticizes her parenting is just envious or uninformed. Last week, it reached a breaking point. Emily brought Sophie over for an overnight stay. The night started fine, but around 10 p.m., Sophie refused to go to bed. I reminded her gently that it was bedtime, and when she screamed, I took her to the bathroom to calm her down. She hit me repeatedly and screamed that she didn't want to sleep. I was firm but calm, explaining that everyone needs rest and that we could read a story after she was calm. Emily, who had come to check on her, started yelling at me. She told me I had no right to discipline her child and that I was traumatizing Sophie. I told her that I couldn't just ignore the behavior, especially because my own kids were scared and couldn't sleep because of the noise. The argument escalated, and Emily ended up leaving in the middle of the night, taking Sophie home. The next day, Emily texted me, calling me controlling and cruel. She said I had no business telling her how to parent and that I had overstepped by even suggesting rules. I replied that I was concerned for Sophie's well-being and that I was trying to protect both my kids and hers. She has since stopped speaking to me and has blocked me on social media. Our parents are upset but are not really taking sides, except to say that we wish both of you would just drop it. My husband thinks I did the right thing because I was responsible for my kids as well and didn't want them harmed or stressed, but part of me feels guilty for confronting my sister so directly. I've been replaying the situation over and over. On one hand, Emily is an adult, and Sophie is her child, so technically, she gets to make parenting decisions. On the other hand, I do feel that her approach is harmful and that standing by quietly would have made me complicit if something worse happened. My parents keep telling me I need to apologize to Emily to save the relationship, but I don't know how to apologize for something I genuinely think was necessary. So, Reddit AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices, even though it may have cost our relationship. I feel torn because I want Sophie to be safe and happy, but I also don't want to destroy my bond with Emily, which has always been really important to me. I'm struggling to figure out if I acted out of genuine concern or if I overstepped boundaries as an aunt. I'm open to hearing honest opinions, even if that means I need to accept some blame. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in after a year of dating. I, 28F, have a pretty close-knit family, or at least I thought so until recently. My younger sister, Emily, 25F, has always been a bit more impulsive than I am. We grew up in a small town, and I moved out for college and ended up staying in the city. Emily stayed behind for work, and that's where she met her boyfriend, Jason, 27M. At first, I liked him. He seemed charming, polite, and funny when we first met him at a family dinner. Over time, though, things started to shift, and I began noticing red flags that I didn't feel comfortable ignoring. Emily and Jason have been together for just over a year. They have a whirlwind kind of relationship, constant texting, weekend trips, and they always post pictures together on social media. Emily mentioned early on that she wanted Jason to move in after about 6 months, and I was surprised but figured she might just be caught up in the excitement of a new relationship. She's always been like that. The issue started when Emily came to me a few months ago asking for advice. She said she and Jason were thinking about him moving into her apartment because he doesn't have a place to stay long-term right now. I asked her about his situation, if he had a lease, family support, or savings, and she admitted he was staying with friends and had a very unstable living situation. She also admitted he had a history of quitting jobs abruptly and moving from place to place. I expressed concern, but she brushed it off, saying she loved him and it would be temporary. About a month ago, she came to visit me in the city, visibly stressed. She admitted that Jason had asked her if she could let him move into her apartment for a month, just until he got on his feet. I was taken aback. Emily said she was torn because she loved him and didn't want to hurt him, but she also wasn't sure if it was a good idea. I told her honestly that I thought it was a bad move. I explained that letting someone with a history of instability move in could end badly, especially if she was emotionally invested. She seemed frustrated with me, saying I was being judgmental. Things escalated when Emily called me a week later, crying because she felt guilty for telling me Jason's latest plan. He wanted to move in permanently. She asked me what she should do. I told her directly that I would not support her decision if she moved forward without considering her own well-being and the impact it might have on her apartment lease and finances. She got defensive, saying I didn't understand their relationship and that I was being controlling. I didn't hear from Emily for a couple of days, and then she showed up at my apartment unannounced. She was emotional and accused me of trying to turn her against Jason and said I had no right to interfere in her life. I tried to calm her down and suggested that maybe she and Jason could find a compromise, like him getting a more stable job or saving up first. She left angry, and I haven't seen her since. A few days ago, I received a group text from my family. My parents and Emily were upset with me because I refused to meet Jason to discuss the moving-in plan or give my blessing. They said I was being unsupportive and trying to control my sister. My parents added that it was her life and that I should stay out of it. I replied politely that I was simply giving my honest opinion as someone who cares about her, and that I wasn't trying to control anything but wanted her to make a careful decision. They haven't responded, and Emily has stopped talking to me. I feel conflicted because I know ultimately it's her decision, but I also can't shake the feeling that letting Jason move in without any stability could be disastrous. I've seen too many friends make similar choices and end up in terrible situations, and I didn't want Emily to repeat that. At the same time, I hate that my family is upset with me and that Emily isn't talking to me. I've always been close with her, and it hurts that a year into her relationship, she's so defensive about my advice. I'm not trying to control Emily's life. I just don't want her to make a potentially harmful decision out of guilt or infatuation. I also think that having Jason move in without a plan is irresponsible and could strain her financially and emotionally. My parents think I'm overstepping, and Emily thinks I'm being judgmental and unsupportive. So, AITA for refusing to support my sister's boyfriend moving in after only a year of dating, given his unstable history, and for giving my honest opinion despite my family's disapproval. I'm genuinely torn because I love my sister, but I also feel like someone needs to look out for her long term, even if it's uncomfortable to say no. My worry is that if I stay silent, I might regret it later when things inevitably go wrong. Has anyone dealt with a situation like this where your family sided with someone who might not be a good influence on a loved one? I'm trying to figure out if I really am being an asshole or if standing firm on something potentially harmful is justified. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding after she called me selfish. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Emily, 35F. Growing up, we were incredibly close, but as adults, our lives took very different paths. I live in a modest apartment in a mid-sized city, work a demanding job in healthcare, and while I enjoy traveling, it's always been on a budget. Emily, on the other hand, has always been more of a high-maintenance personality. She married young, has a successful career in marketing, and tends to spend extravagantly. About 6 months ago, Emily announced her engagement to her fiancé, Mark, 36M. The news was exciting, and I was genuinely happy for her. The complication came when she revealed that she wanted to have a destination wedding in the Maldives, which, to be frank, is extremely expensive. She explained that she and Mark were covering their own costs for the ceremony and honeymoon, but guests would be responsible for their travel, accommodation, and any associated expenses. The first thing that hit me was the cost. Flights alone from my city were around $1,500, and hotels were averaging $400 per night. The wedding would last 4 days, so, including food and transportation, I was realistically looking at a minimum of $3,500 to attend. I make a decent salary, but I also have student loans, rent, and other responsibilities. I had to think practically. I tried talking to Emily about it. I said, "Emily, I really want to be there for your wedding, but with my financial situation, I can't justify spending over $3,000 on a trip right now. Is there a way we could celebrate locally or even postpone the destination thing for a year?" Her reaction was unexpected. She got very defensive and said that this was the wedding of her dreams and that it was not negotiable. She also said something that has haunted me ever since. "If you can't come, it really makes me question whether you actually care about me." I tried to explain that it wasn't a matter of caring, but she wasn't hearing it. Over the next couple of weeks, I thought about my options. I considered taking out a small loan or trying to save up, but realistically, it would have put me in debt for months, and I already live paycheck to paycheck. I even thought about just going for the day of the wedding and flying back, but even that would have been around $2,000 for a one-day visit. It wasn't feasible. Eventually, I had to make a decision. I wrote Emily a long message explaining my situation, reiterating how much I loved her and wanted to celebrate her marriage, but that I simply couldn't afford to attend a wedding abroad. I suggested an alternative. Maybe I could come visit her before the wedding and take her out for a special day together, or we could have a small celebration locally with family and friends. Emily didn't take it well. She responded with a long, angry message accusing me of being selfish, not supporting her dreams, and making everything about money. She said, "I can't believe you'd choose money over me. I thought you were my sister." My parents got involved, and they tried to mediate, but they were torn because they understood both sides. As the wedding date approached, Emily continued to guilt me. She posted subtle hints on social media about how sad it was that some people couldn't make it, and how family should always be there. I felt awful, even though I knew I couldn't afford to go. A part of me wanted to just take out a loan and go despite the financial strain, but I reminded myself that doing so would create months of stress and resentment, and that wasn't healthy for me. I also started noticing that Mark and Emily's friends were all extremely wealthy, and their lifestyle was very different from mine. It became clear that even if I did attend, I might feel out of place or even judged for not keeping up with the extravagant experiences they were planning. I realized that this wasn't just about money. It was also about the social environment that I might not be comfortable in. I finally made the call. About a month before the wedding, I sent Emily a heartfelt email explaining again that I couldn't attend because of financial and personal reasons. I emphasized that my love and support for her had nothing to do with money, and I suggested we plan a smaller celebration together once she returned from her honeymoon. I offered to help in other ways, like coordinating a group gift or helping with wedding planning remotely. Emily replied, but instead of understanding, she accused me again of being selfish and implied that I was prioritizing myself over our relationship. She told me she didn't know if she could consider me family if I wasn't willing to make such a huge effort for her special day. This cut deeply, and I felt trapped between my own financial reality and the expectations of my sister and family. Since then, there's been tension in the family. Our parents understand my side, but are frustrated with the lack of compromise from Emily. I've had friends tell me that I'm justified in not going, that Emily is being unreasonable and manipulative. Others say that maybe I should have found a way to attend regardless. Here's the part that makes me question myself. I do genuinely love my sister, and I hate that she feels hurt. But at the same time, attending this wedding would have put me in a serious financial bind, and I don't think it's fair to expect someone to spend thousands of dollars just to attend a party, no matter how much they care. I tried to reach out to Emily a few times to make amends, but she's still cold and distant. Our relationship has been strained, and I'm wondering if I handled this correctly or if I should have done something differently to show my support. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding due to financial constraints and being called selfish for it. AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay at my house after she abandoned them during a weekend trip. So I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has 3 kids, Max, 10, Sophie, 8, and Leo, 5. I've always been closer to my sister's kids than to Emily herself, mostly because Emily can be, well, unreliable. She's sweet, but her parenting has always been somewhat chaotic. I live in a small apartment with my husband, Daniel, 34M, and we don't have a huge space, but we have a decent routine that works for us. We both work full-time, and we value our weekends as our downtime. Last weekend, Emily was supposed to go on a short 2-night trip out of state with a friend. She asked if she could leave the kids with me, which I agreed to because I honestly enjoy spending time with them. I reminded her several times that I would need the schedule of the kids, meal plans, bedtime routines, and anything else important since I didn't want to disrupt their normal routine too much. Emily agreed and said she would send everything over before she left. The day she left, she showed up with a small overnight bag for the kids. No schedules, no snacks, no instructions beyond "they're your problem now." I was a little annoyed, but I could handle it. I made dinner, read them bedtime stories, and everything is fine. But the next day, it started to spiral. Emily was supposed to be in touch with daily updates, at least to check how they were doing. She didn't message me at all. I tried texting her about Sophie's soccer practice and Max's homework, but I got no response. On the second day, I noticed that Leo had a minor rash, and I didn't know if it was something new or if he had a medical condition I wasn't aware of. I tried calling Emily, still nothing. I had to Google remedies, and Daniel and I did our best to make him comfortable. Sophie started asking for her favorite snack that Emily normally packs, and Max wanted to play a video game he specifically couldn't play on school nights, but Emily never told me any rules. I felt like I was juggling 3 children without a map, which was stressful. That evening, I decided to call Emily again because I was honestly feeling overwhelmed. When she finally picked up, she sounded annoyed and told me that she had forgotten her phone at the hotel and would call me later. She seemed unconcerned about the kids' needs, saying things like, "They're fine, just feed them and keep them entertained." It was clear she didn't plan on checking in at all. By the 3rd day, I was exhausted. Max had a science project due on Monday that he hadn't even started. Sophie wanted to go to a friend's birthday party, and Leo needed a nap that he couldn't settle into without his usual routine. I ended up canceling a dinner Daniel and I had been looking forward to and spent hours at the craft store and grocery store trying to accommodate every last thing the kids needed. I felt like I had taken on the role of parent without consent and without proper support. When Emily returned, she acted like nothing had happened. She thanked me in a very perfunctory way and immediately started asking me to take the kids for the next weekend too, because she wanted to go to a longer trip. I told her, bluntly, that I could not do it again, at least not without proper planning and communication. She got visibly angry and accused me of overreacting. She said I was being selfish and that the kids had fun, so I shouldn't be complaining. Daniel agreed with me privately, but Emily started texting mutual friends, trying to get them to pressure me into agreeing to watch the kids again. Emily's arguments were that I should help family, and that she didn't want to leave the kids with a babysitter or spend money on a hotel that allowed kids. She said that since I had watched them once, I was obligated to do it again. I pointed out that her lack of preparation caused me a lot of stress, and that she didn't even communicate with me while she was gone. She told me I was overreacting and that I was being dramatic for refusing. Now, Emily is upset and distant, and I feel guilty because I love my nieces and nephew, but I also feel that my boundaries are being ignored. My friends and Daniel think I was right to say no, but Emily's framing it as me being a bad sister who doesn't care about her kids. AITA for refusing to take her kids again after this experience? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what happened last year? I, 29F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emily, 26F. Growing up, we were inseparable despite the usual sibling fights. Emily has always been a bit dramatic, and I mean that in a loving way, but sometimes it turns into something that really affects everyone around her. Last year, she got engaged to her boyfriend, Matt, 27M, and I was genuinely happy for her. We talked constantly about wedding plans, and I tried to help as much as I could. I even offered to help with the invitations, dress shopping, and even seating arrangements. I thought we were on the same page. Things started to go south when she decided she wanted a destination wedding. It was a beautiful idea, and I would have loved to go, but Emily decided to make it extremely exclusive. Only immediate family and a few friends were invited. That meant our extended family wasn't coming. I didn't mind too much, but I was hurt that some cousins who were very close to us were left out. Emily told me it was her dream wedding, and I should understand. I tried, I really did, but it felt dismissive of everyone else's feelings. Fast forward to the wedding planning. Emily and Matt started being very rigid about who could help with what. They hired a wedding planner, which is fine, but every suggestion I made was either ignored or criticized. When I suggested a fun bridal shower idea, she said it was too childish. When I offered to help with catering ideas, she said she already had it all under control and didn't need anyone's input. I started feeling more like a guest than a sister. The breaking point came with the rehearsal dinner. She invited me to coordinate the seating, which I thought was simple. But on the night, she threw a fit because I had seated two of her cousins next to people she didn't like. She screamed at me in front of everyone, saying I ruined the whole vibe of the night and that I didn't understand her vision. I tried to stay calm, but I was mortified. Everyone was staring, and I ended up leaving the dinner early. Matt didn't say anything, and Emily called me later that night crying, saying I didn't support her and made everything about me. I tried to explain I was only trying to help, but she didn't listen. After that, I distanced myself. I tried to reach out occasionally, but Emily would either ignore my messages or respond angrily. The final straw was when she sent me a wedding itinerary that included a group photo schedule. I was expected to attend all photo sessions, even ones I wasn't comfortable with, like a sisters alone shoot. I told her I wasn't comfortable with it and that I needed some space, but she interpreted that as me hating her wedding. She started sending me passive-aggressive texts like, "It would have been nice if my sister cared about me," or, "I guess you're too busy to celebrate my happiness." I eventually decided not to attend the wedding at all. I sent a polite message explaining that I couldn't be there because of the emotional strain of last year's events and that I hoped she understood. My parents and a few close friends supported me, saying that my mental health comes first. However, Emily and Matt were furious. They called me selfish, accused me of holding grudges, and said I was ruining their special day. They even posted on social media about how family drama prevented some guests from attending, and I was clearly the one they meant. Now, it's been almost 6 months since the wedding, and Emily refuses to speak to me. Our parents try to mediate, but she's adamant that I betrayed her. Some mutual friends have tried to stay neutral, but the tension is so bad that no one really talks about family gatherings without fear of confrontation. I feel guilty sometimes, but at the same time, I know I tried my best to support her last year, and being treated so poorly during such an important time was incredibly hurtful. I want to repair our relationship eventually, but I feel like Emily is holding onto a version of events where I am the villain. I'm not sure if I should reach out again or just let her process on her own. I've been told by a few friends that skipping her wedding was justified, but my parents keep asking if I could have handled it differently. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after how she treated me last year. I really did try to support her, but it turned into a nightmare for me emotionally, and I don't know if I'm wrong for protecting myself. I feel like family loyalty is important, but at what cost to my own well-being? AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's son stay at our house, even though my husband thinks I'm overreacting. I, 32F, have been married to my husband, 35M, for 8 years. We live in a small house in a suburban neighborhood that, while cozy, doesn't really have extra space for guests. We have 2 kids of our own, ages 5 and 7. Everything in our home is organized around our family, and we both work full-time jobs, so we value routines and predictability. My husband has a younger brother, Mark, 30M, who recently had a son, Jake, 8. Jake is an energetic, loud, and sometimes impulsive child. He's smart and generally well-behaved, but he has a lot of energy and struggles with boundaries, especially in environments he's not used to. Mark and his wife are going through a rough patch and are asking family members for support more than usual. A few weeks ago, Mark called my husband and asked if Jake could stay with us for a few days because they were dealing with some issues and didn't want to disrupt their work schedules. My husband immediately thought it was a good idea. He's very close with his brother and wants to be helpful. He assumed I would be okay with it. I told him honestly that I wasn't comfortable with having a child we don't see every day suddenly staying in our house. We had our own kids' schedules to maintain, and frankly, our home isn't set up for an additional child, especially one who is full of energy and unpredictable. I also mentioned that our younger child has some sensory sensitivities, and having an unfamiliar, excitable child in the house could cause stress for them. My husband argued that we could make it work, that Jake was family, and that it would help his brother out. He also said it would be a good opportunity for our kids to bond with their cousin. I told him I was worried about our own children's needs being disrupted and the stress it would put on me trying to manage 3 children at once. I suggested that perhaps Jake could stay with his grandparents, or even that we could spend time with him during the day instead of having him sleep over. Mark then got involved and told my husband that it was not fair for us to refuse because Jake needed a stable environment, even if only for a few days. He said it was important for family members to step up and help in tough times. My husband started to get frustrated with me, saying I was not being supportive of the family and that I was overreacting. He even suggested that if I wasn't comfortable, maybe I should just deal with it for a few days. I refused. I explained that I wasn't refusing to help Jake in general. We could still host playdates, take him to the park, or even have him over for dinner. But having him sleep in our house and disrupt our children's routines was a boundary I wasn't willing to compromise. I reminded my husband that boundaries are important, and our house isn't a hotel for family members' children whenever it's convenient for them. He was visibly upset and said I was making this bigger than it is and turning family into a chore. Mark also expressed disappointment and said he felt like we didn't care about Jake's well-being. This started to escalate over text messages, with my husband and his brother questioning my priorities and accusing me of being inflexible. A few days later, Mark mentioned that if we didn't let Jake stay with us, he and his wife might have to ask someone else who wasn't as close. He said that he thought family would understand. My husband, after several arguments with me, finally said he didn't want to cause a rift, but he still seemed disappointed and occasionally makes comments about how hard it would be for Jake to not be with his cousin. The situation has caused tension in our household. My husband is upset and sometimes passive-aggressive, implying that I'm being selfish and not valuing family. I feel that my refusal was entirely reasonable given our home circumstances and our children's needs. We tried to compromise in other ways, like spending more time with Jake during the day and arranging weekend visits. But my husband still seems to resent that we didn't allow an overnight stay. Some extended family members have reached out after hearing about the disagreement. Some think I'm right, saying that a temporary overnight guest, especially a child, can be disruptive and that families should respect household boundaries. Others think I'm wrong, saying that family should help each other in tough situations, especially when it involves a child. I understand that helping family is important, but I also feel like my household needs and boundaries should be considered. I didn't refuse out of malice or dislike for Jake. I just knew that having him stay would create stress for me and our children. I also worry that if we give in once, it could set a precedent where we're expected to accommodate every last-minute family request without consideration for our own family's routine. The conflict has caused tension not only with my husband, but also with his brother, and I'm worried it might create long-term issues in our relationship with Mark's family. At the same time, I feel like if I had agreed, I would have been resentful and stressed, which could negatively impact our kids. So AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's son stay at our house. Even though my husband thinks I'm overreacting, I feel like I drew a reasonable boundary, but the way my husband talks about it makes me wonder if I'm really being unreasonable. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. I, 28F, have always had a close relationship with my older sister, Emily, 32F. Growing up, we shared a room, confided in each other about everything, and even through college, we remained best friends. Emily has always been the more outgoing one, while I am a bit more introverted, but our differences never caused any serious conflicts. Recently, Emily got engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years, Alex, 34M. At first, I was genuinely happy for her. I met Alex a few times before the engagement, and he seemed polite and normal, though a little reserved. I didn't think much of it. Once they set the wedding date, things started to change. Emily and Alex live about 2 hours away, so we don't see each other all the time, but we text frequently. I began noticing that every time Emily brought up a family or personal story, Alex would make a sarcastic comment or subtly criticize her. For example, Emily mentioned that she was excited about the wedding dress she found, and Alex said, "Are you sure that color even looks good on you? I mean, you could probably pull it off, but it's risky." At first, I brushed it off as I'm joking, but the comments kept coming, and they weren't just about her appearance. They were about her choices, her career, and even her family. About 3 months before the wedding, Emily started asking for my help with planning. She knows I am organized and detail-oriented, so I was happy to help. That's when I started noticing that Alex was extremely controlling. He insisted on vetoing vendors Emily liked, micromanaging timelines, and questioning every minor decision. Once, Emily told me she wanted a small, intimate ceremony, and Alex said, "Small? Why would anyone want that? It's your day, but if you do it this way, people might think you're cheap." Emily seemed conflicted, but she went along with his preferences because she didn't want to upset him. I tried to gently talk to Emily about it, but every time I brought up my concerns about Alex's behavior, she would get defensive. She told me that I was overreacting, that Alex loved her, and that I was seeing things from a biased perspective. I respected her choices, though I felt uneasy. Over time, I started noticing more patterns. Alex would make backhanded compliments, belittle her in front of others, and dismiss her ideas as impractical. The breaking point came 2 weeks before the wedding. Emily called me in tears because Alex had thrown a fit about the seating chart. He wanted to move certain relatives to different tables because he thought they were boring or awkward. He insisted that my niece, who is 8, should sit with adults instead of with other children because she needs to learn proper behavior. Emily was distressed and didn't know what to do. She asked me for advice, and I told her bluntly that I thought Alex's behavior was controlling and disrespectful, and that it was not healthy for her to feel anxious and fearful about upsetting him. Emily hung up without responding. Later that day, she called again, furious. She said I had no right to judge Alex, that I was trying to sabotage her wedding, and that if I didn't agree to support him, I shouldn't expect to be part of the wedding at all. She said my attitude was hurtful and that my refusal to bend would force her to make difficult choices about our relationship. I was shocked because I never imagined Emily would prioritize Alex's feelings over hers in such a blatant way. The next few days were tense. Emily sent me texts asking me to reconsider attending, emphasizing how important it was for her to have me there. She also reminded me that I was part of the wedding party, and my absence would embarrass her. I kept trying to explain that I wasn't comfortable attending because I didn't want to enable Alex's behavior, but she wouldn't listen. Finally, I made the decision to not go to the wedding. I sent Emily a heartfelt message explaining that I love her and that I wanted the best for her, but I couldn't support a marriage that I believed was beginning with controlling and manipulative behavior. I said I hoped she would understand that my absence was not a lack of love, but a matter of personal integrity and concern for her well-being. Emily responded angrily. She accused me of being selfish, controlling, and judgmental. She said that I was choosing a man over your sister and that I had crossed a line. She also blocked me on social media, and our family has been caught in the middle. My parents understand why I made the decision, but they are upset about the family drama. Some relatives have reached out to ask me to reconsider, arguing that I am causing unnecessary conflict and that I could just be polite and ignore Alex during the wedding. I feel torn. On one hand, I deeply love my sister and hate that our relationship has become so strained. On the other hand, I cannot condone or ignore the way Alex treats her. I also fear that attending the wedding would be seen as tacit approval of his controlling behavior, and I would be uncomfortable every minute. I know Emily might never forgive me, and I've received mixed messages from family members about whether I am overreacting. I've lost sleep over this, and I still wish things could be different. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay at my house after she suddenly moved back to town and expected me to accommodate her for months. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we had a typical sibling relationship, fights over small things, but generally supportive of each other. After college, Emily moved across the country for work, while I stayed in her hometown to pursue my career and eventually bought a modest 2-bedroom apartment. I've always considered myself somewhat independent and private, and over the years, I've developed routines and habits that make my space very me. About 3 months ago, Emily texted me out of the blue. She told me she was moving back to our hometown because her job contract had ended unexpectedly and that she didn't have anywhere to stay yet. She asked if she could stay with me temporarily while she got back on her feet. I agreed at first because, well, she's my sister, and I knew she didn't have family nearby to rely on. I assumed this would be a week or two kind of arrangement, maybe a month at the most. I wanted to help her out. The first week went relatively smoothly. Emily kept to herself most of the time, which I appreciated. But then she started expanding her stay week by week, claiming she just needed a little more time to sort things out. I started noticing little things that were irritating. She wasn't helping much around the house, leaving dirty dishes in the sink, and treating my space like a hotel rather than a shared living arrangement. I work from home, so having someone constantly around started affecting my productivity. On top of that, she started inviting her friends over without asking, which made my apartment feel crowded and noisy. I tried to gently bring these things up, suggesting she help more with chores and respect my work schedule, but she brushed off my concerns, saying she didn't want to feel like a guest that has to follow rules. After about a month, it became clear that she wasn't actively looking for another place. Whenever I asked her about her job search or apartment hunting, she'd say she was trying but nothing is working out, or that she didn't want to rush things. Meanwhile, I felt my own life was being disrupted. I work long hours, have social commitments, and need my apartment to be a place where I can recharge. But lately, it felt like I was constantly adjusting to Emily's schedule, cleaning up after her, and dealing with her friends. My patience started running thin. Finally, about 6 weeks into her stay, I sat her down for a serious talk. I explained that while I loved her and wanted to help, this situation was no longer temporary, and I couldn't continue hosting her indefinitely. I suggested she start looking for a longer-term solution and gave her a deadline of 2 weeks to find another place. I thought this was reasonable. Emily immediately got defensive. She accused me of being selfish and said I was treating her like she was a burden. She said she had nowhere else to go and implied that I should be accommodating because we're family. I reminded her that family support doesn't mean giving up your own well-being or turning your home into a permanent guest house. Her response was to start guilt-tripping me. She posted on social media about how her sister was turning her away in her time of need and messaged mutual friends and family to complain about me. Some of our relatives sided with her, saying I should be more accommodating. Others were supportive of my decision, acknowledging that having a sibling over indefinitely without contributing is unsustainable. Emily started leaving her things scattered everywhere, using my groceries without asking, and leaving dirty laundry in the living room. It reached the point where I had to start locking my bedroom door just to have privacy. I understand she's going through a tough time, and I could truly empathize with that. But the more time she stayed, the more I felt my boundaries were being ignored. I even offered to help her financially with a deposit for an apartment or co-sign a lease if she needed it, but she insisted she could manage on her own. I realized that her staying with me indefinitely wasn't about logistics. It was about convenience for her. I felt cornered. I had to put my own mental health and personal space first. 2 weeks after the talk, Emily still hadn't found a place. I reminded her of the deadline and told her she needed to leave. She finally got angry, saying I was heartless and that I had no right to kick her out. She refused to help with moving her things or make arrangements. Eventually, I had to contact a moving service myself to get her stuff out of my apartment. The whole process was extremely stressful and caused a lot of tension between us. She's since moved into a small rental, but our relationship has been severely strained. She barely speaks to me and has stopped inviting me to family gatherings, claiming she can't face me. Meanwhile, I feel a mix of relief and guilt. I know I did the right thing for my own boundaries, but I hate that it came at the cost of our relationship. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay indefinitely and enforcing a deadline for her to move out. I genuinely wanted to help her when she first arrived, but I also had to consider my own needs and well-being. I'm torn between feeling justified and feeling like I've damaged my relationship with my sister permanently. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to help my brother financially after he ruined his own life. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable job in marketing, own my apartment, and have been careful with money since I was a teenager. My younger brother, Jake, 28M, has always been the opposite. He's charming, fun, and everyone likes him, but he's also reckless and makes very poor decisions, especially financially. A few years ago, Jake got himself into a lot of debt. He bought a brand new car that he couldn't afford, racked up credit card bills, and then invested in a series of get-rich-quick schemes that all failed. I tried to help him in the past, giving him small amounts of money to cover essentials while he got back on his feet, but I had limits. I've learned the hard way that enabling someone to live irresponsibly doesn't help them. Last year, things escalated. Jake lost his job at a tech startup after a conflict with his boss and was forced to move back in with our parents. He started borrowing from everyone he knew, including me. I gave him $2,000 once, hoping it would tide him over while he found work, but he spent it on gambling and going out with friends instead. I was furious when I found out. I told him clearly that I would not be giving him money anymore unless it was for essentials like rent or groceries, and only if he could prove he would use it responsibly. Fast forward to now. Jake came to me asking for $15,000. He claims he wants to start a new business, some online marketing agency. He's been working on a business plan and has convinced himself it's a sure thing. I read through the plan, and it's full of unrealistic projections and lacks any real strategy or client base. I told him I couldn't lend him the money because I didn't trust him to use it responsibly, and I couldn't afford to risk that much either. He exploded. He accused me of being selfish, cold, and a bad sister. He told me that family should stick together and that I was abandoning him when he needed me the most. He also claimed that our parents always sided with me and that I was the golden child who got everything handed to her. I was stunned because I have never received special treatment, and I've worked hard for everything I have. Our parents tried to mediate. They said I should at least give him a little to help him get started, but I refused. I explained that I would support him in non-financial ways, helping him create a real business plan, reviewing resumes, even networking with my contacts, but I would not give him money he's likely to waste. My parents were disappointed and said I was being harsh and that I should think about the family bond. Jake hasn't spoken to me since. Our other siblings are divided. Some agree with me. Some think I should have helped. I feel like I'm doing the responsible thing, but the guilt is eating at me because he's my brother and I can see he's desperate and scared. At the same time, I know that bailing him out financially every time he messes up has done more harm than good in the past. Recently, I found out he's trying to borrow money from mutual friends, some of whom are also reluctant to give him large sums. I'm worried that if he doesn't get help, he might end up in a dangerous situation, homeless or worse. But I also know that giving him money isn't the solution. I don't want to be seen as the villain here, but I also can't ignore my boundaries and the lessons I've learned about enabling destructive behavior. I've tried to explain this calmly to Jake, but he refuses to listen. AITA for refusing to give my brother $15,000 to start a business when he has a history of irresponsibility and poor financial decisions. I want to help him succeed, but I don't think giving him the money is the right way. My parents think I'm being too harsh, and I'm starting to wonder if I am overreacting. This situation is tearing our family apart, and I feel stuck between doing what I think is right and the emotional pressure of being a bad sister. I need an outside perspective. AITA for refusing to let my roommate's partner stay at our apartment for an indefinite period, even though my roommate thinks I'm being unreasonable. I, 28F, live in a 3-bedroom apartment with my roommate, Sarah, 27F. We've lived together for about 3 years, and for the most part, things have been smooth. We split rent and utilities evenly, and we respect each other's space and privacy. I work full-time from home as a software developer, and I also freelance on some projects in the evenings, so I spend a lot of time in the apartment and value a calm and predictable environment. About a month ago, Sarah started dating someone named Alex, 30M. At first, it was occasional visits, overnight once or twice a week, which I didn't mind. Alex is polite and friendly, and I've interacted with him a few times in shared spaces. The arrangement worked because he was always respectful of our schedules and didn't overstay his welcome. Recently, however, things escalated. Sarah told me that Alex had broken up with his previous living situation and didn't have a place to stay temporarily. She asked if he could stay in our apartment for a while because he needed a stable environment while figuring things out. When I asked what for a while meant, she said she wasn't sure, but probably at least a month, maybe longer. I immediately felt uncomfortable. Our lease doesn't allow more than the two of us as residents, and I didn't want to risk violating any agreements. Beyond that, our apartment isn't big enough for another person long-term without impacting everyone's privacy and comfort. I also felt uneasy about the lack of a clear timeline. I explained to Sarah that I wasn't okay with having Alex move in indefinitely. I suggested that she could help him find a short-term rental, or perhaps he could stay with friends or family temporarily. I also offered that he could visit during the day or occasionally sleep over for a night, but making him a resident was a boundary I wasn't willing to cross. Sarah got upset and accused me of being cold and unsupportive. She argued that Alex is part of her life now and that it's a tough situation, implying that I should be more compassionate. She also said that since she pays her share of rent and utilities, I shouldn't have a say in who stays. I reminded her that while rent is split, living together also involves respecting each other's comfort, boundaries, and legal constraints. The discussion escalated over a few days. Sarah started leaving passive-aggressive notes around the apartment, saying things like, "Some people just don't understand helping friends in need." Alex also began showing up more often unannounced, sometimes spending entire nights in the living room while I was working, which made me feel like my space was being invaded. I tried to set clear boundaries. I told Sarah that I wouldn't feel comfortable if Alex became a permanent presence, and that any overnight stays had to be limited and scheduled in advance. I also mentioned that I needed my apartment to be a productive work environment, and having another adult there unsupervised for long periods disrupted that. Sarah accused me of being selfish and said I was prioritizing work over humanity. Some mutual friends have weighed in. A few agree with me, saying that roommates should be able to enforce boundaries and that long-term unplanned guests can create tension and practical problems. Others side with Sarah, saying I should be more flexible and compassionate since Alex is clearly in a difficult situation. The tension has made living together uncomfortable. Sarah has been distant and curt, and I feel anxious about being at home because it seems like every interaction is charged. I've tried to compromise by suggesting that Alex could stay for a single week if he needed it, but Sarah wants something indefinite. I feel like giving in would set a precedent where I could be expected to accommodate long-term guests whenever she wants, which isn't fair to me or the household dynamic. At the same time, I worry that refusing is making me seem heartless or unsympathetic. I don't dislike Alex, and I understand that people sometimes need help, but I also feel strongly that my home, privacy, and mental well-being need to be respected. I've tried to be polite and reasonable, but Sarah acts as though I'm the villain. Recently, she suggested that if I continue to refuse, she might look for another apartment so she and Alex can live together. That feels like an ultimatum, and I'm worried about the strain it will put on our friendship. I'm also concerned about my own boundaries being disrespected in the future. So, AITA for refusing to let my roommate's partner stay at our apartment for an indefinite period, even though my roommate thinks I'm being unreasonable. I feel like I'm standing up for my own comfort and legal responsibilities, but the way Sarah talks about it makes me question whether I'm being too rigid. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? I have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily. We are 5 years apart, and growing up, I felt like our parents favored her in ways that often left me overlooked. That said, as we got older, we became somewhat closer. I moved to a different city for college, and Emily stayed behind, so we didn't see each other as often. Still, we talked on the phone a few times a week, and I thought we had a decent adult relationship. About 2 years ago, Emily started dating a man named Derek. From the beginning, I had reservations about him. He was charming on the surface, but something about him always felt off to me. He seemed controlling in subtle ways, often making jokes at her expense that she would laugh off, and I noticed he had a habit of isolating her from friends and family. I tried to voice my concerns gently, but Emily would always brush them off, saying I was overreacting or being dramatic. I didn't push too hard because I respected her autonomy, but I remained wary. Fast forward to a few months ago, Emily got engaged. She was thrilled, and I genuinely wanted to be happy for her, but the engagement only seemed to magnify Derek's controlling tendencies. He started making plans for the wedding almost entirely on his own, ignoring Emily's suggestions, and I noticed he was subtly attempting to alienate certain family members from participating. For example, he insisted my parents not be involved in certain parts of the ceremony because it would distract from the vibe and discouraged Emily from inviting some of her childhood friends, claiming they wouldn't fit in. Emily seemed to be going along with all of this, and it worried me. I tried to talk to Emily privately about my concerns. I told her I felt Derek was manipulative and that some of his behaviors were red flags for emotional abuse. She got defensive, saying I didn't understand their relationship and that she was happy. I felt frustrated and helpless because I genuinely thought she might be walking into a toxic situation, but I couldn't force her to see it. As the wedding plans progressed, things escalated. Derek started dictating what Emily could wear, where she could go, and who she could talk to. During one family gathering, he openly criticized her choice of wedding dress in front of everyone, saying it was not suitable and that she shouldn't embarrass him. Emily laughed it off nervously, and no one else said anything, which made me feel increasingly uncomfortable. I realized that attending the wedding might feel like endorsing his behavior, and I didn't want to compromise my own boundaries. I finally made the decision to tell Emily I wouldn't attend her wedding if Derek was going to be there. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her or my love for her, but about not wanting to be part of a situation where I felt her autonomy and dignity were being undermined. I offered to celebrate with her before or after the wedding in a private setting if she wanted, just without Derek present. Emily was devastated. She cried and accused me of being selfish, saying that I was letting my personal dislike for Derek ruin her big day. She even claimed that I was overstepping as a sibling and trying to control her choices, which was ironic because I had repeatedly tried to emphasize that she needed to make her own decisions. Our parents were also upset. They didn't want me to miss the wedding, and they pressured me to reconsider, saying family should be present no matter what. I stood my ground, but it has caused a rift between us. Some family members have expressed that I'm being dramatic and that I should put aside my issues with Derek for Emily's sake. Others, particularly a few of Emily's close friends who have seen Derek's controlling behavior, have privately supported my decision. The tension has been palpable in family group chats, and I'm constantly getting messages asking me to make it work for the wedding. Since then, Emily and I have barely spoken. She's hurt and distant, and I feel guilty but also resolute. I don't want to normalize or enable what I perceive as abusive behavior, but I also don't want to lose my sister entirely. I've tried reaching out gently, offering support in other ways, but she seems unwilling to engage as long as I refuse to attend the wedding. I keep second-guessing myself. Maybe I am overreacting or letting my perception of Derek overshadow my love for Emily. Perhaps my absence will make her feel abandoned on one of the most important days of her life. On the other hand, attending might feel like condoning Derek's actions and compromising my own values. I'm stuck between wanting to protect my sister and wanting to respect my own boundaries, and I don't know if I made the right choice. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé, AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices and causing a huge family fallout. I, 34F, have always been very close to my family, especially my younger sister, Emily, 29F. We grew up in the same household, shared secrets, and supported each other through school, relationships, and major life events. Emily has always been a bit unconventional in her approach to life, and over the years, that extended to her parenting style. I have a very structured, planned approach to most things, while Emily tends to go with her gut and make decisions on a whim. I never thought that difference would lead to a serious rift between us, but here we are. Emily has 2 children, a 6-year-old daughter, Mia, and a 4-year-old son, Leo. From the moment she became a mother, Emily made it clear she had a unique vision for how she wanted to raise them. She doesn't believe in traditional schooling. Instead, she opted for a homeschooling curriculum that is extremely flexible and heavy on creative projects, but light on structured learning. She also has very loose rules regarding screen time, sugar consumption, and sleep schedules. The children can stay up as late as they want if they are inspired or creative, and bedtime is more of a suggestion than a rule. Emily frequently brags about this style on social media, and while I've tried to keep my opinions to myself, it's been hard not to feel concerned, especially given that Mia has developmental assessments at school and Leo has some sensory and behavioral needs that professionals have advised need consistency. A few months ago, Emily decided she was going to take both children on a 3-week road trip across the country in the summer, despite the fact that Mia has never spent a full day in a structured environment like a school or daycare, and Leo struggles with long car rides without routines. When I asked Emily how she planned to manage meals, sleep schedules, and educational activities on the road, she waved me off, saying, "It's an adventure. They'll learn more living life than sitting in a classroom. You're so uptight." I tried to explain my concerns calmly, but she interpreted it as criticism and told me I had no right to question her parenting. The tipping point came a few weeks ago when Emily returned from that trip. Mia had regressed in several areas. She was struggling with reading and writing, which had previously been on track, and Leo had become incredibly clingy and irritable, which I suspect was due to inconsistent sleep and overstimulation. My parents, who have always tried to stay neutral, asked me to help Emily settle the children back into routines. I started gently suggesting activities and schedules to help the kids get back on track, and at first Emily accepted some advice, but then she began ignoring or contradicting me. She started posting photos on social media of the kids eating fast food for every meal and staying up late into the night, seemingly flaunting it. That's when I finally snapped. I wrote her a long message, carefully explaining my observations and concerns. I didn't accuse her of being a bad mother, but I outlined specific behaviors that I thought were negatively impacting Mia and Leo. I suggested that maybe she consider gradually introducing more consistent routines and even consulting a child development specialist to get a professional perspective. I also mentioned that as her sister, I felt I had a responsibility to speak up because I care about her and the children. I try to phrase it as support rather than judgment, but I admit the message was lengthy and very direct. Emily responded with anger. She accused me of trying to control her children and undermining her authority as a mother. She said I was overstepping and that my tone was condescending. My parents and several mutual friends have been drawn into the argument because Emily started telling them that I had attacked her parenting. Emily then blocked me on social media and refuses to answer my texts or calls. Our other sister, Sarah, told me that Emily feels humiliated and betrayed and that I should apologize to keep the peace, but I genuinely feel that I was expressing legitimate concerns for the well-being of my niece and nephew. To make matters worse, during a recent family gathering, the tension was palpable. Emily refused to speak to me, and our parents seemed torn between defending me and supporting her. My relationship with Mia and Leo has also been strained. I used to spend weekends with them, but now Emily has limited my contact, claiming I'm a negative influence. I tried reaching out to the kids through video calls, but Emily monitors them and cuts them short, saying they're too tired or not in the mood to talk to me. It's heartbreaking because I feel like the kids are caught in the middle, and I genuinely miss being part of their daily lives. Some of my friends think I did the right thing by standing up and advocating for the children, while others think I overstepped and should have taken a subtler approach. I have reflected on my message and my tone, and I acknowledge that maybe I could have phrased some points more delicately or chosen a different medium, like speaking in person. On the other hand, I can't shake the feeling that staying silent would have been worse, given the regression in the kids' development and the chaotic environment they returned to after the road trip. I feel torn between defending my actions and wanting to repair my relationship with Emily. The rest of the family is split. My parents are upset about the fallout, but also understand my concerns. Sarah is urging me to apologize, not necessarily because she thinks I'm wrong, but because she wants the family to stop being divided. Emily, however, is furious and has refused any attempts at reconciliation. I have considered sending a neutral message apologizing for upsetting her while standing by my concern for the kids, but I'm not sure if that would come across as genuine or if it would simply inflame the situation further. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices, even though it caused a massive family conflict. I was trying to help the kids and support her, not hurt or control her. But the way she reacted and the way the family is now fractured makes me question whether I should have stayed quiet or handled it differently. I just don't want to see Mia and Leo struggle or regress further. And I feel like as their aunt, I have some responsibility to at least voice my concerns. I am stuck between wanting to protect the children and wanting to mend my relationship with my sister, which feels like it may be permanently damaged because of this confrontation. AITA for refusing to lend my car to my cousin, even though she claims it's an emergency. I, 29F, have been saving up for years to buy a car that suits my needs and lifestyle. I recently purchased a used but reliable vehicle, which I am very careful with. I've invested a lot of time and money into making sure it's in good condition, and since I rely on it for work and errands, I treat it as both a necessity and a personal investment. My cousin, Lily, 27F, has a history of being a bit careless with possessions that aren't hers. She has borrowed clothes, electronics, and even cars in the past, and usually something ends up scratched, lost, or returned late. Because of this, I have always been cautious about lending her anything expensive or important. A few days ago, Lily called me in a panic. She claimed her car broke down unexpectedly and she needed to get to an urgent job interview across town. She asked if she could borrow my car for the day. I hesitated immediately because I had plans that day, a long grocery run, picking up some furniture I had bought, and a meeting in the evening that required driving across the city. I explained this to her, but she insisted it was an emergency and kept emphasizing how important it was for her to get to the interview. I asked if she could take a taxi or ride-sharing service, or if I could help her find an alternative way to get there. She dismissed all these options and continued pressuring me, saying that it would only be for a few hours and that she would be extremely careful. I reminded her about the past instances where she had borrowed things and returned them damaged or late. She became defensive and accused me of not trusting her. Eventually, I told her I couldn't lend her the car. I explained that I had responsibilities and obligations that depended on having my vehicle, and that it was not fair to put me in a situation where my plans could be disrupted. She became very upset and said that I was selfish and family should help each other in emergencies. After that, she went on social media, posting vague comments about how some relatives don't care when you're in trouble. My other family members started messaging me, asking why I wouldn't help Lily. I tried to explain that I had prior commitments and that my decision wasn't personal, but some people implied that family should come first no matter what. A few days later, I found out from another cousin that Lily did manage to get to her interview by taking a combination of public transport and ride-sharing, but she missed a significant part of the day and arrived flustered. She later told me that she got the job, but she still seemed bitter about me not lending my car. I've reflected on the situation and considered whether I overreacted or was too rigid. On one hand, it was indeed an urgent matter for her, and I understand the stress of needing transportation unexpectedly. On the other hand, my car is crucial for my day-to-day life, and lending it to someone with a history of mishandling things, especially for something time-sensitive and high-stakes, felt risky. Since this incident, Lily has been giving me the cold shoulder, and it's caused tension at family gatherings. My parents and some cousins have expressed disappointment, saying I could have made a small sacrifice to help. I've tried explaining that saying yes might have created bigger problems for me, such as missing my appointments or dealing with potential damage to my car, which I can't afford to fix or replace easily. I feel like I was fair in setting my boundary. I didn't refuse to help in general. I suggested alternatives, offered advice, and expressed concern, but I drew the line at lending my car because it would have caused a real disruption and potential financial risk. At the same time, I can't ignore that it was a legitimate emergency for her, and I understand why she felt upset. Since then, Lily has not spoken much to me, and my relationship with her feels strained. Some family members have subtly suggested I owe her something for not helping in her moment of need. I'm wondering if I could have handled it differently, perhaps by arranging another solution that allowed her to get to her interview while protecting my own responsibilities. So, AITA for refusing to lend my car to my cousin, even though she claimed it was an emergency? I feel like I acted reasonably given the circumstances, but the reactions from my family and Lily make me second-guess whether I was being selfish or unreasonable. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her choice of bridesmaids? I, 28F, have always been close with my sister, Emma, 32F. Growing up, we shared a lot. School projects, vacations, and even the occasional argument that we always resolved within a day. I always considered us inseparable. However, things started to shift about 6 months ago when Emma got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 34M. Initially, I was over the moon for her, and I genuinely wanted to help with every part of the wedding planning. But then came the bridesmaids list, and everything went downhill. Emma announced that her bridesmaids would be a mix of her lifelong friends and some women she met through work. I was expecting, of course, that I'd be one of her bridesmaids. We've been sisters for over 3 decades, and I thought it would be natural for her to include me in that inner circle. Instead, she included 2 of her co-workers who she barely knows outside the office and left me off entirely. She didn't give me a clear reason why. She just said she wanted a balanced group and that it was complicated. When I asked for clarification, she brushed it off with vague statements about wanting everyone to feel comfortable and fit together. I tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe she wanted a professional vibe for the photos. Maybe there were logistical concerns I wasn't aware of. But the more I thought about it, the more it hurt. I'm her sister. Shouldn't that automatically make me part of the wedding party? I voiced my feelings to her calmly, saying I was hurt and disappointed. She responded defensively, telling me that this wasn't a reflection of our relationship and that I was overreacting. I tried to accept that, even though it felt like a slap in the face. Things got more complicated when the wedding planning progressed. She began asking me for help in other ways, organizing the guest list, helping with decorations, and assisting with seating arrangements. I did all of it without complaint, even though I felt like I was being treated more like a wedding assistant than a sister. At one point, I politely suggested that since I wasn't a bridesmaid, maybe I shouldn't be tasked with so many responsibilities, but she told me that she needed me around and that my involvement was important. It felt contradictory and confusing. As the wedding day approached, tensions rose even further. The bridesmaids were all very close to each other and had started planning pre-wedding events without including me. I wasn't invited to the bachelorette party, the bridal shower, or even informal gatherings. When I asked Emma about this, she said she thought I wouldn't want to attend since I wasn't officially a bridesmaid. I told her that I would have loved to be included regardless of my title, but she just said she didn't want to force anything. A week before the wedding, Emma had a meeting with me to discuss the seating arrangement and my role in the ceremony. She mentioned that the bridesmaids were going to be doing a special choreography for one of the songs, and that I wasn't expected to participate. She also casually mentioned that I should wear a neutral-colored dress to blend in, rather than matching the bridesmaids' outfits. I felt invisible and unimportant, and I told her honestly that I didn't want to attend if I wasn't a bridesmaid. I explained that watching her be surrounded by people she barely knew while I stood on the sidelines would be too painful. Emma was furious. She accused me of being selfish, saying that my presence was important to her and that I was overreacting. She even suggested that I was trying to ruin her wedding over a perceived slight. I tried to explain that this wasn't about ruining anything. It was about feeling excluded on one of the most important days of her life. She wouldn't listen and said that if I didn't attend, I would be cutting ties with her entirely. I've been in a state of constant anxiety since that conversation. I know that the wedding is supposed to be a happy occasion, but I can't shake the feeling of being replaced. I love my sister, but I also have to protect my own mental health. I've told a few friends and family members about the situation, and their opinions are mixed. Some say I should just suck it up and attend to avoid family drama. Others say I have every right to step back when my feelings are being ignored. Now, I'm torn because the wedding is next weekend. I haven't RSVP'd yet, and I feel like my decision will either create a rift that might take years to mend or force me into an emotionally unbearable situation. I want my sister to be happy, but I also can't help feeling like my bond with her is being undermined by a list of coworkers and friends she barely knows. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I'm hurt about not being chosen as a bridesmaid. I feel like this decision might be seen as dramatic or selfish, but from my perspective, it's about self-respect and emotional boundaries. I just don't want to lose my sister over this, but I also don't want to feel invisible on her big day. I know that some people might say weddings bring out emotions that aren't always rational and that I should prioritize family harmony over my feelings. But I can't shake the sense that being left out of such a symbolic role as her sister has deeply affected me. I've spent countless hours helping her prepare in other ways, but being sidelined in the part of the wedding that celebrates her closest relationships is something I can't ignore. I'm sharing the story here because I need perspective. Am I truly being unreasonable, or is it fair to step back to preserve my emotional well-being? AITA for ruining my sister's wedding because I refused to lie about my stepdad? I, 28F, have a complicated family situation, and something happened recently that has made me question whether I was in the wrong. My family setup is a bit messy, so bear with me. My parents divorced when I was very young. My mom remarried a man, let's call him Dan, 50M, when I was about 12. Dan has always been the type of person who tries very hard to blend in with a family that isn't naturally his own. At first, I tolerated him because I understood that my mom was happy, but as I got older, I realized he was manipulative and emotionally controlling, not just to me, but to my mom as well. I have a younger sister, Emily, 24F, who is very close to my mom and Dan, probably more so than I ever was. Emily has always idolized Dan and sees him as a father figure, even though my mom and I have had long discussions about how Dan's behavior is often problematic. He has a habit of exaggerating stories to make himself look heroic, often takes credit for things he hasn't done, and has a subtle but constant way of gaslighting people who disagree with him. I won't lie, he's charming to outsiders, which makes it really hard to explain to anyone why I don't like him. Emily recently got engaged to her fiancé, Alex, 27M, and immediately started planning the wedding. She asked me to be her maid of honor, which I happily accepted despite knowing that it would put me in close contact with Dan for months. Things started fine, but tensions slowly built as the planning continued. Dan insisted on being involved in everything, from picking the venue to designing the invitations, and he tried to insert himself as a co-host in a way that made me uncomfortable. He would make comments about how the wedding needed to reflect his family's values or make everyone proud, which clearly implied that my own mother's and my opinions were secondary. I tried to brush it off, but it became more obvious as the date approached. The biggest issue happened about 2 weeks before the wedding. Emily asked me to write a speech for the rehearsal dinner. I wrote one that included memories of growing up with my sister and touching anecdotes about Emily and Alex. When I shared the draft with Emily, she said it was lovely, but asked me to include a paragraph about Dan, calling him an incredible stepdad and saying that he had been a major influence in my life. I hesitated. I have never felt close to Dan, and saying anything flattering about him would be dishonest. Emily tried to convince me that it would mean a lot to her and that it was a tradition to acknowledge parents and step-parents in speeches. I told her that I couldn't do it because it wouldn't be truthful. A small compliment or anecdote that wasn't entirely false. Dan started subtly accusing me of being disrespectful and ungrateful in front of the extended family. Emily has been avoiding me and sending passive-aggressive texts. Friends who attended the wedding reached out asking what happened, and it has been incredibly stressful. I feel torn because, from my perspective, I didn't lie or do anything malicious. I just refused to falsely praise someone I have never respected. However, I can see why Emily might feel hurt, especially since it was her wedding day and she idolizes Dan. At the same time, I think she was pressuring me to do something that went against my personal integrity. I can't help but wonder if I handled this in a way that made the situation worse than it needed to be, or if I was justified in my stance. So, AITA for refusing to say flattering things about my stepdad in my sister's wedding speech, even though it caused tension and hurt feelings during the event. AITA for refusing to invite my sister to my wedding after what she did at my engagement party. So, this is going to be long, and honestly, I've tried to process everything multiple times before posting, but I feel like I need an outside perspective. I, 29F, have been with my fiancé, Alex, 31M, for about 5 years. We recently got engaged, and the wedding planning has been going relatively smoothly, except for one major point of stress. My older sister, Jessica, 33F. Jessica and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, we were close in some ways, but she's always had a bit of a competitive streak, and honestly, she can be manipulative at times. For most of our adult lives, I try to keep a polite distance, but she's very insistent about staying involved in everything in my life. Fast forward to our engagement party last month. We had invited family and close friends. Nothing huge, just a celebration at a local hall. I spent weeks planning it, making sure everyone would have a good time. Jessica was on the guest list, obviously, but I specifically asked her not to bring her boyfriend because we were keeping the event small and intimate, and I knew she tends to dominate conversations. She agreed, saying she understood. The day of the party, everything seemed fine at first. People were mingling, drinks were flowing, and everyone was having a good time. Then, Jessica showed up with her boyfriend. I was caught off guard and asked her why she brought him despite our agreement. She shrugged and said, "I didn't think it would be a big deal. He's my partner. I should be allowed to bring him." I explained again that the guest list was limited and that I wanted this to be about Alex and me, but she rolled her eyes and went to mingle anyway. At first, I tried to ignore it, but things quickly escalated. Jessica's boyfriend started loudly criticizing some of the food choices, saying things like, "Who even likes this?" and "You really went cheap on this, huh?" It was embarrassing, and several guests were looking at me uncomfortably. I tried to steer him away, but Jessica kept defending him, saying I was overreacting. Then came the worst part. We had a small speech portion where Alex and I thanked our families and friends. Jessica decided to give her own toast without asking. She stood up, grabbed a microphone, and started talking about how she had always supported me, but that she was worried Alex wasn't good enough for me. She said things like, "I just hope she's making the right choice because I would hate for her to regret it. And he seems nice, but I know how she can be, and maybe he won't handle her mood swings well." Several people tried to interject, but she just waved them off. I was mortified. Alex was quietly trying not to react, but I could see he was hurt and angry. I finally told her to stop, that it was completely inappropriate, and she just laughed and said, "Relax, it's just my opinion." She stormed out with her boyfriend after that, but not before loudly complaining to everyone that I was being too controlling. The rest of the party felt awkward and tense, and a lot of guests came up to me later saying how uncomfortable they were. After that, I tried to talk to her over the next few weeks to explain why her behavior was unacceptable. She refused to take responsibility, instead claiming I was being dramatic and overreacting. She said she was just being honest and that I should appreciate her concern. I felt like there was no reasoning with her, so I decided to set a boundary. Now, we are planning our wedding, and I made the decision not to invite Jessica. I told Alex first, and he completely supported me, saying he didn't want her drama ruining our big day. I haven't told her yet, but I'm preparing for the fallout. I expect her to be furious and accuse me of being unfair, but I genuinely feel like this is a reasonable boundary given her past behavior. My parents are split. Mom thinks I'm justified and says she's seen Jessica act this way before, so she understands protecting my happiness. Dad, however, thinks I'm overreacting and that family should put aside differences for a wedding. He keeps saying things like, "It's just one day, can't you just tolerate her?" I've tried explaining that tolerance isn't the issue. This is about creating a safe and joyful environment for Alex and me on our wedding day. But he keeps pushing back. I'm worried about the social fallout. Jessica is well connected with some of our extended family, and I know she might try to sabotage the wedding or cause a scene if she finds out. I've been debating whether I should invite her with very strict rules, but honestly, I don't trust her to follow them, and I don't want to risk our day being ruined. So, AITA for deciding not to invite my sister to my wedding after what happened at my engagement party. I feel like it's a clear boundary for my mental health and for Alex's comfort. But I keep second-guessing myself because everyone says weddings are about family, and I'm afraid I'm being too harsh. I don't want to hurt her unnecessarily, but I also don't want her behavior to dictate our wedding experience. I want to be fair, but I also want to protect my wedding from drama. I feel guilty, but I also feel relieved when I think about her not being there. Am I really the asshole here? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.